Selamat siang, malam, atau sore untuk penonton ipedia.id. Pada kesempatan ini kita akan menyaksikan secara bersama perjalanan sidang di Dewan Keamanan PBB yang membahas serangan Iran terhadap Israel maupun serangan Israel terhadap Iran. Dalam persidangan darurat yang berlangsung pada Minggu 14 April 2024 ini, terjadi perdebatan sengit antara delegasi Iran dan delegasi Israel dalam mempertahankan argumentasinya masing-masing. Lantas, bagaimana perjalanan perdebatan itu berlangsung? Mari kita saksikan dan nonton secara bersama.
I now give the floor to the representative of Israel.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, yesterday, the Ayatollah regime, in blatant violation of the UN Charter and international law, attacked the State of Israel and launched 170 UAVs, 120 ballistic missiles, and 30 cruise missiles carrying 60 tons of explosive materials at Israel. This attack was launched from Iranian soil, as well as from Lebanon, Yemen, Syria, and Iraq. Colleagues, from the moment I began my tenure here, in every speech and in countless letters, I rang the warning bell regarding Iran. I called on this Council to take concrete action against the Ayatollah regime. I made it clear that Iran and its hegemonic ambitions of global domination must be stopped before it drives the world to a point of no return, to a regional war that can escalate to a world war. Sadly, no action was taken, and last night the world witnessed an unprecedented escalation that serves as the clearest proof for what happens when warnings aren't heeded. Israel is not the boy who cried wolf. We have been screaming from the rooftops for years, trying to wake up the international community, but to no avail. If only this Council would have internalized my words, it would not have needed the bone-rattling explosions of last night's attack to wake it up. Colleagues, last night, Iran proved again that it cares nothing for Islam or Muslims. The Iranian attack seriously injured Amina al-Khassouni, a 7-year-old Bedouin girl in Israel. But look at this video that shows how Israel intercepts Iranian drones above the Temple Mount and Al-Aqsa Mosque. Here, you can look at it. This is the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The Ayatollah regime, in its plot to impose a global Shiite hegemony through its proxies, has even attacked Saudi Arabia, as we all remember, Aramco oil field, the United Arab Emirates, and anyone else they view as an obstacle. I asked the Algerian representative here, how does this make you feel? Is this a price you support, attempting to blow up mosques and murdering Muslims? The Ayatollah regime has a clear plan. Its goal has been and continues to be world domination by exporting its radical Shiite revolution across the globe. I assume you all know it. The Islamic regime of today is no different than the Third Reich, and Ayatollah Khamenei is no different than Adolf Hitler. This is why Iran arms themselves with intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs. Iran and Israel are on the same continent. You are next. The Ayatollah regimes acts like the Nazi regime, and their army includes Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, the Houthis, the Revolutionary Guard, and other savage jihadists. We all remember the 2021 attack on the oil tanker Mercer Street, in which British and Romanian crew members were killed. And just yesterday, Iran seized a Portuguese cargo ship, the crew being held right now by Iran includes Indian, Filipino, Pakistani, and Russian nationals. Iran threatens global maritime trade. Iran is not only a terror state, Iran is a pirate state. Colleagues, just this week, the court in Argentina held Iran directly responsible for the 1994 terror attack in Buenos Aires on the Jewish Community Center, which killed 85 people and wounded 300. The Iranian regime not only spreads evil abroad, but also torments and murders their own citizens. In 2023 alone, the Ayatollah regime executed 834 Iranians. The regime oppresses women while murdering them for not wearing their hijab properly. When the Iranian people peacefully protest this brutality, they are suppressed by live ammunition. Hundreds of protesters were killed and thousands have been arrested. This is a regime that allows its own people to die of thirst in Isfahan, while it funds terror around the world with billions of dollars. What have you done to defend the world from Iran? Seriously, the entire globe is suffering from Iran, including the Iranian people. Please defend them. Mr. Secretary General, Iran has been violating Security Council resolutions and the UN Charter for years. They supply Hezbollah with weapons in violation of resolutions 1559 and 1701. Why have you not used all possible means to condemn Iran and demand compliance? Why have you instead rolled out the red carpet for these genocidal jihadists? Why do you treat them as if they are interested in de-escalation when you know that the opposite is true? Iran has attacked Israel from its own sovereign territory, publicly and proudly. The mask is off. Iran, the #1 global sponsor of terror, has exposed its true face as the destabilizer of the region and the world. And now, right now, is when the world must stop ignoring Iran's crimes and take action. As Iran's mask has fallen, the world's complacency must also fall. The mask comes off and the gloves must come on. Council members, last night's attack was a blatant violation of international law and the UN Charter. It was an act of utter escalation that can drag the entire region and world into war. But can you imagine if the attack was carried out under an Iranian nuclear umbrella? Or if some of Iran's missiles had nuclear warheads? The regime that launched an unprecedented strike on Israel, a fellow member state of the UN, is barreling towards nuclear capabilities.
Oke teman-teman, itu tadi sejumlah alasan yang disampaikan oleh delegasi Israel di mana mereka menuding Iran sebagai negara yang mensponsori aksi terorisme. Mereka juga mendesak Dewan Keamanan PBB untuk memberikan sanksi yang tegas terhadap Iran. Lantas, bagaimana jawaban dari delegasi Iran menanggapi sejumlah tudingan serius dari delegasi Israel tersebut? Mari kita saksikan secara bersama.
I thank the representative of Israel. I pass the floor to the representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Thank you. In the name of God, the compassionate and merciful, Madam President, as we informed in our letter last night in response to the Israeli regime's recurring military aggression, particularly its armed attack on 1st April 2024 against Iranian diplomatic premises, a defiance of Article 2 of the Charter of the United Nations, the armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran carried out a series of military strikes on Israeli military objectives with dozens of missiles and drones. Iran's operation was entirely in the exercise of Iran's inherent right to self-defense as outlined in Article 51 of the Charter of the United Nations and recognized by international law. This concluded action was necessary and proportionate. It was precise and only targeted military objectives and carried out carefully to minimize the potential for escalation and prevent civilian harm. Madam President, we thank those members of the Council who condemned the Israeli armed attack against our diplomatic premises in Syria. Regrettably, in this chamber, certain members of the Council, including the US, UK, and France, has chosen once again to turn a blind eye to reality and overlook the root causes contributing to the current situation. In hypocritical behavior, these three countries falsely blamed and accused Iran without considering their own failures to uphold their international commitment to peace and security in the region. They made unsuccessful attempts to use lies, manipulate the narrative, spread disinformation, and engage in a destructive blame game. All the while, they deliberately disregarded Iran's inherent right to respond to the violation of a fundamental principle of international law, the inviolability of diplomatic representative and premises. Moreover, they ignored the underlying root causes of the current situation in the region. For over 6 months now, these countries, especially the United States, have shielded Israel from any responsibility for the Gaza massacre, while they have denied Iran's inherent right to self-defense against the Israeli armed attack on our diplomatic premises. At the same time, they shamefully justified the Israeli massacre and genocide against the defenseless Palestinian people under the pretext of self-defense. They made cynical attempt to justify and cover up the atrocities of the Israeli regime against the people of Palestine by arbitrary and misleading interpretation of self-defense. Madam President, following the Israeli regime cowardly terrorist and armed attack against our diplomatic premises in Damascus, the Syrian Arab Republic, we called upon the Security Council to strongly denounce this unjustified criminal and terrorist act, taking decisive and appropriate measure to bring the perpetrators to justice swiftly and prevent the recurrence of such horrible crime against the diplomatic premises of any member state. Regrettably, the Security Council has failed in its duty to maintain international peace and security. Russia proposed a press statement to denounce this atrocious act, which was backed by China, Algeria, and many members, but was blocked by the US, UK, and France. Faced with such circumstances, the Islamic Republic of Iran had no choice but to exercise its inherent right to self-defense under international law. Madam President, the root cause of the current situation are clear to all. From the start of the Israeli war against Palestinian people in Gaza, more than 34,000 civilians, 2/3 of them children and women, have been killed. All civilian infrastructures have been targeted and destroyed by Israel. Even humanitarian workers have not been immune from the military attacks of this rough regime. The absence of accountability and conscious inaction faced with the Israeli genocide and war crimes against the Palestinian people has only emboldened this regime to continue its violation unchecked. The US and its allies have blocked the Security Council for over 6 months, protecting Israel from accountability for the Gaza massacre. They not only avoid condemning Israel for these atrocities, but also actively try to cover up them. Their sole priority is supporting and defending Israel, regardless of the consequences and at all costs. Despite international pressure and UN Security Council resolution calling for a ceasefire, Israel has defied this resolution. Rather, its focus remains on committing more atrocious crimes, showing no regard for international legal obligation. Madam President, This lawless regime has committed many atrocious crimes against our people. This regime blatantly and openly admitted its responsibility for the terrorist and destructive operation committed against Iranian officials, scientists, and civilians, and sabotage against our peaceful nuclear infrastructure in recent years. This Israeli regime even made explicit threats to use nuclear weapons against a sovereign member state of the United Nations. This terrorist regime is responsible for all criminal and terrorist acts committed against Iran and must bear the consequences. The Islamic Republic of Iran has warned time and again about the repercussions of the malicious activities of the regime on regional and international peace and security. Iran has exercised maximum restraint. Now it is time for the occupying regime to bear full responsibility for its consequences. This regime cannot avoid accountability. Madam President, Israel's ongoing destabilized and irresponsible action and atrocities against the nation in the region are a real threat to regional and international peace and security. The Israeli Prime Minister's policy seeks to expand and escalate the conflict in the region to stay in power. The member of the Security Council must not allow such an august body, the Security Council, to be held hostage to the ambitions of such a belligerent regime. It is time for the Security Council to shoulder its responsibility and address the real threat to international peace and security. The Security Council must promptly fulfill its duty under Chapter 7 of the Charter in response to Israeli reckless defiance. It must take urgent and punitive measures to compel this regime to stop its genocide and massacre against the people of Gaza and uphold its obligation, especially fully implement the UN Security Council resolution and legally binding orders of the International Court of Justice.
Sampai di sini makin jelas ya teman-teman bahwa kedua negara terlibat dalam saling tuding. Israel mengatakan bahwa yang menjadi teroris di sini adalah Iran, sementara Iran juga menyatakan bahwa yang menjadi teroris adalah Israel karena melakukan pembantaian dan genosida di Gaza. Dan tak hanya itu, Iran mengatakan bahwa serangan yang mereka lakukan kemarin terhadap Israel merupakan tanggapan atas serangan yang dilakukan Israel terhadap konsulat Iran yang ada di Suriah. Menurut Iran, mereka menjalankan haknya untuk membela diri sebagaimana yang diatur dalam hukum internasional. Lantas, bagaimana tanggapan teman-teman menanggapi argumentasi kedua belah pihak? Silakan berbagi pendapat Anda di kolom komentar.